Hey, this is C&D channel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my predictions for UFC Fight Night 51, Bigfoot versus Arlovski 2, which happens on September 13th on UFC Fight Pass. It actually happens on the same day as Mayweather versus Maidana 2. So, I don't really know how well, if a lot of people are going to watch this. As far as the card goes, it's decent. You know, recognizable enough guys like Tibau, women's fight here, Yuri Alcantara. You know, a lot of just mid-level guys. There's not many guys that I'd say are like hot prospects or anything like that. There are a couple, like the Alcantara Doane fight is like divisionally relevant. So is Andrei versus Pacheco. All the other ones are kind of mid-level fights. If Piotr Hallmann beats Gleison Tibau, he's up for better fights. The main event, you know, Bigfoot's in the top 10. Arlovski, not so much these days, but, you know, I don't expect that to be that great, to be honest with you. You know what, let's just get started. Okay, in the main event, we have Andrei Arlovski versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva. So Bigfoot's beaten Arlovski back in Strikeforce. Now it's when Arlovski had that really terrible losing streak. Arlovski has a 22-10 record with 1 no contest, 15 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. He also has 7 losses by KO or TKO. He's 35 years old. Same height, actually, as Bigfoot. He's 6'4". And he's on a 3-fight win streak, most recently beating Brendan Schaub in a fight that was both terrible and a fight I didn't think he should have won, even though I picked him to win. Right now, he's training out of Jackson Winklejohn. He's a former UFC heavyweight champion and a real veteran, too. You know, he's fought a lot of big-name fighters, Fedor, Tim Sylvia, like 4 times, actually. Sergey Karatanov and a couple others, Ben Rothwell, Roy Nelson, knocked those guys out, actually. That's when he was on his good run, and he beat Verdum in that good run too, actually. He does, at his best, he has good boxing and good takedown defense. At his worst, and you see this a lot, when he gets hit clean, he'll back up straight against the cage and almost freeze. And so a lot of times get knocked out. Happened with him against Sergey Karatanov. Even in the 4th fight against Tim Sylvia, he got hit clean once, and you see him just go straight back against the cage and just kind of freeze. His stand-up defense needs some work. He can brawl a lot of times. His chin is... You know, it's kind of funny. A lot of people will say his chin sucks, and some people will say it doesn't. Regardless, out of his 10 losses, 7 of them are by KO or TKO. And a lot of them aren't flash knockouts. I mean, he's going to sleep a lot of times. Ironically, when he first fought Bigfoot Silva, though, he actually did not get finished. Even when he fought Anthony Rumble Johnson, hard-hitting guy, didn't get finished. But his defense is really bad. And that's the thing. So whether you believe he has a weak chin or not, I don't know. I think he does. Chins don't get better. And, you know, he can be a tough guy sometimes, but also he's just against a lot of guys that hit really hard. Antonio Bigfoot Silva is a guy who hits really hard. He has an 18-5 record with 1 draw, 13 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. He also has 4 losses by KO or TKO. 34 years old, 6'4", training out of ATT. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Stand-up's good. Surprisingly, when he fought Arlovski the first time, for a guy with such like a big head, he was actually using head movement. You know, it's not like he has great stand-up, but he's also really game too. He's always in the fight. He's a heavy-handed guy, both like literally and figuratively. The guy has huge hands, and he can knock people out, and has. And his ground and pound, especially when he mounts you, is like insanely good. Like Mark Hunt couldn't get out of it. He got saved by the bell. Fedor was just dying from his ground and pound. Mike Kyle. A lot of guys get beaten up when they're on their back against Bigfoot Silva. Defensively, Bigfoot does get hit a good amount of times. It's to be expected. I mean, 4 of his 5 losses are by KO or TKO. One of them was to like Cormier. Who else did he lose to? Who else he got knocked out by? Oh, twice by Cain Velasquez. One by Cormier. And the other one, I forgot who knocked him out. I should probably know this, but I don't. He's actually gone 5 rounds, too, with Mark Hunt in a really good heavyweight fight, which was a surprisingly good heavyweight fight. I mean, he did start gassing around the 4th or 5th round. He'd start getting sloppy, but he was in the fight. With that said, I got to go with Antonio Bigfoot Silva to win this one. Arlovski is a guy that looks like he's on a decline. He gets hit clean. He reacts very badly when he gets hit. And, I mean, his performances in the cage have been, like, more missed than anything else. If he goes up against a guy that's, like, really lower tier, he can probably knock him out. Even if he goes up against, like, a mid-level guy, like a Mike Kyle or something. I mean, he has competitive fights with them, or like Brendan Schaub, who I don't even think beat him, and that's a terrible fight. And then when he goes up against the higher level guys, lately especially, he's been getting knocked out. So, and Bigfoot's already beaten him. Bigfoot's not a guy that I feel is on a total decline. He's coming off a really good fight against Mark Hunt. It's off a layoff, but that might have actually helped him because that was a grueling fight. Gotta go with Antonio Bigfoot Silva to win that one. Next fight, that Piotr Hallmann fights Gleison Tibau. Actually, Gleison Tibau, 29-10 record, 3 wins by KO or TKO, 12 wins by sub. He also has 3 losses by KO or TKO. He's 31 years old, training out of ATT. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt with good wrestling, strong top control. Stand-up is improving, but his cardio is pretty weak, especially when he gets into 3rd round. I mean, there's a lot of guys, like Jamie Varner, he wins the first, Tibau wins the first 2 rounds, Jamie Varner wins the 3rd. And it's usually like that with Gleison Tibau. Perfect gatekeeper. Guys like Michael Johnson will beat him. Evan Dunham, when he was in his prime, beat him, but now he's kind of not there anymore. Michael Johnson recently beat him. Who else beats Tibau? Jim Miller. Melvin Gillard when he was on that good win streak. So, perfect gatekeeper type fighter. Huge for the weight class too. Piotr Hallmann, 15-2 record, 7 wins by KO or TKO, 7 wins by sub. He's 27 years old. I like this guy. I think he's actually a pretty underrated prospect. And I still think he's a prospect. 27 years old, still showing improvement. Most recently choking out Eve Edwards. Good stand-up, good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, good cardio as well. He's just solid everywhere. I'm going to go with Tibau to win this one. However, I have seen Piotr Hallmann. He did beat a somewhat similar fighter, like this big hulking Brazilian guy, and Francisco Massaranduba Trinaldo in a fight that I don't think many people expected him to win. Even in his loss against Ali Quinta, he looks really solid. And like I said, with Piotr Hallmann, he's just a really solid fighter. He's good everywhere. Not great anywhere. It's good cardio. It's always in the fight, However, he's up against a hulking Brazilian guy that's a good wrestler who has good top control and just enough stand-up that it's not a total liability. Gotta go with Tibau. I think this is going to be a lot closer than it probably appears on paper, though. Like I said, I'm pretty high on Piotr Hallmann. I think he's just one of the more underrated lightweight prospects on the roster right now. Nonetheless, Tibau is the perfect gatekeeper type for a guy like him. Whether Piotr Hallmann's ready for the top level guys or not, Tibau is the guy you have to get through to figure that out. I don't think he's ready quite yet. Gleison Tibau for the win. Okay, next fight after that, Efrain Escudero fights Leonardo Santos. So this is what, like the third or fourth time that Escudero's been like brought back to the UFC. I think it's third. So he fought there, he got cut, then he came back, lost a bunch, got cut, now he's coming back again. Escudero, 22-8 record, 2 wins by KO or TKO, 12 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by submission. 28 years old, training out of MMA Lab with the likes of Benson Henderson and Bruce Leroy and like John Moraga, among others. He is the Ultimate Fighter Season 8 winner. He's good everywhere, you know. He has some good enough stand-up, you know. His wrestling solid, his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu solid. He's up against Leonardo Santos, has a 12-3 record with 1 draw, 1 win by KO, 8 wins by sub, 34 years old, training out of Nova União. He's the Ultimate Fighter Brazil 2 winner. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Stand-ups is pretty average. This one's hard for me to call. I forgot who Leonardo Santos fought last. I want to say it's Norman Park, and I think he managed to get a draw out of him. He actually showed some improved stand-up in there. I thought that Norman Park should have got the win over Leonardo Santos. The thing with Efrain Escudero is he'll beat some good guys. Luis Palomino. I think he beat Dakota Cochran. I'm not too sure. Lost to Jorge Patino. He lost to Danzig. You know, I mean, he is just so unreliable. He has the tools, you know, but the thing is, he'll stand with his opponents when he should be wrestling, and he'll wrestle with his opponents when he should be standing with them, you know? I can't trust Efrain to win this one. I think he has the skills to win this one. He's too inconsistent for me to pick him. At least with Santos, I kind of know what he's going to do. He'll use the stand-up to like force a clinch situation, get the fight to the ground, and use his superior Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills to try and get the win. It's worked for him. He's competitive with guys around Escudero's level. Like I said, like Norman Park, for example. And at least, like I said, he's consistent with that attack. Efrain, he can just be a guy that doesn't... He like mentally checks out or something. Like he doesn't always seem to always be in the fight. And you know, I thought he has the skills to beat Mac Danzig, and Mac Danzig beat the guy. You know, like I said, skill wise, I think Efrain probably has the better all around skill. Consistency wise, I gotta go with Leonardo Santos to win this one. You know, I think he knows what he's good at. He generally sticks with what he's good at. And I think it's enough to get the win over a guy who's very hot and cold like Escudero. Because Escudero is so hot and cold, I'm not super confident with this pick. But once again, I just can't trust the guy to... I just can't trust the guy because he's just way too inconsistent. Okay, next fight after that, Wendell Oliveira Marquez fights Santiago Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio has an 18-2 record, 10 wins by KO or TKO, 6 wins by sub. He's 27 years old, training out of Team Nogueira. He actually has some good stand-up. It can be a bit reckless at times. I remember when I was actually rewatching some of his fights against like Mafra, and he got knocked out in that fight. He does throw at a pretty good jab. I remember when he fought, his only fight in the UFC so far was against a really good prospect in Ryan LaFleur. But LaFleur managed to use his stand-up, get the body lock clinch, takedown, ground and pound, just total like blue collar effort from Ryan LaFleur. And that's not really Wendell Oliveira's game. Wendell Oliveira, 24-7 record, 11 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO and 4 losses by submission. 31 years old, 7-fight win streak. It is his first fight in the UFC. One thing I noticed when I saw him fight, the guy's a strong dude. He does have good Muay Thai, but his strength that I saw one of his fights, and his strength was in his counter striking. I really liked what I saw from his counter striking. I haven't seen much of his ground game, but I don't know if Ponzinibbio is going to be the guy to really test that. I can see actually Ponzinibbio standing for the majority of the fight, and I can actually see Wendell Oliveira utilizing his counter striking against Ponzinibbio, and that's what I'm going to go for here. Obviously, there's X factors like for Oliveira, like it's his first fight in the UFC. I think he's actually a replacement for Sergio Moraes, so he is taking the fight on somewhat. It's not really that short notice. I remember Moraes kind of got pulled out of the fight pretty early on after it was announced. But I'm gonna go with the superior counter striking of Wendell Oliveira to win this one. Next fight, that Yahya Alcantara fights Russell Doane. Russell Doane has a 14-3 record, 6 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by sub. Also has 2 losses by submission. 28 years old on a 3-fight win streak. Trains out of Hawaii Elite MMA with like Louis Smolka fights out of there. He does have good wrestling. He showed that against Marcus Brimage. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu solid. His stand-up's kind of average. Against Brimage, he looked really average in the stand-up, actually. It's his surprisingly, for a guy with more KO and TKO victories, the stuff I've seen from Russell Doane has been more of his grappling acumen than his stand-up. Yahya Alcantara, 30-5 record with 1 no contest, 13 wins by KO or TKO, 12 wins by sub, 34 years old on a 2-fight win streak. He's pretty big for the weight class. He's tall and lanky. And this guy knocked out Ricardo Lamas in the WEC at 155. Now he fights at 135. I didn't even think he was that small at 145. He has strong Muay Thai, strong Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. His one weakness would be his takedown defense. During like Faber's streak before he lost Renan Barão, the only guy that Faber couldn't finish was Yahya Alcantara. He is a total, like, not many people know who Yahya Alcantara is, but people that do know him know that, like, the guy's elite, in my opinion at least, or close to it, because his stand-up and his ground game are very high level. I don't think this is a good matchup for Russell Doane at all, to be honest with you. I think Yahya Alcantara takes this pretty handily, to be honest with you. I think he can outstrike Russell Doane, and he's arguably going to be the better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner as well. Doane probably has the better wrestling, but in most other facets of the game, I mean, you see Yahya Alcantara, he was going grapple to grapple, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He was going grappling with Wilson Hayes, who's a really legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he managed to win that fight. So yeah, I gotta go Yahya Alcantara. I think he's better than him on the ground. I think he's better than him on the feet. The only thing you gotta worry about is the takedown defense, really. But even then, I don't think it's that much of a liability, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay, next fight after that on the main card, and the final fight of the main card, we have Jessica Bata Estaca Andrade versus Larissa Moreira Pacheco. I believe Bata Estaca means pile driver, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong. Okay, Andrade, 11-3 record, 4 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by sub. She also has 2 losses by KO or TKO. Only 22 years old. She's pretty small for the weight class. She's only 5'2". She's on a 2-fight win streak, and she's pretty much a brawler that's super aggressive and always pushing forward. She actually has a pretty decent guillotine as well. You see the fight against Rosie Saxon, and she was going straight Vanderlei on her. And she managed to beat Raquel Pennington in her last fight as well. Also just using her brawling and aggression to get the win there. Pacheco has Pacheco has a 10-0 undefeated record. 4 wins by KO or TKO, 6 wins by sub. She's 20 years old, and she is a finisher. She's taking the fight on short notice. It's supposed to be Valerie Letourneau who's supposed to fight Andrade. And it will be Pacheco's first fight in the UFC. Pacheco got some notoriety having this really fun fight against Invicta FC fighter Irene Aldana, and it was just like back and forth. Pacheco actually kind of has a very similar style to Andrade, to be perfectly honest with you, from what I saw in that fight. However, I think Andrade is just a little better of a brawler. Like I said, she does have a pretty good guillotine. Pacheco can kind of forsake position for submission. She'll be on her back and like just throw triangles, you know, even though she doesn't really have the best position to do so and whatnot. So she can be a bit reckless about her attack as well. I gotta go with Andrade. She's fun to UFC. I think she has a similar style to Pacheco. Might be just a little better at it, to be honest with you. So yeah, Jessica Andrade for the win. Okay, on to the prelims. Dashon Johnson fights Godofredo Pepey. Interesting they're going with Dashon Johnson because he lost his last fight against Jake Matthews. And Pepey won his last fight against Noad Lahat. Pepey has a 10-3 record, 4 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO, 27 years old, and he has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's good off his back. Stand-up's really reckless. He actually won his fight against Lahat by a flying knee. So he'll throw things. But he has shown to be very susceptible to ground and pound. The 2 guys that beat him by KO or TKO was Felipe Arantes, which ground and pound, and Sam Cecilia also beat him by ground and pound. So I think the problem is he's really active off his back, offensive off his back, but he'll forsake defense when he's off his back as well. Dashon Johnson, 9-1 record, 5 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub, 26 years old, trains out of Team Explode MMA, the likes of Derek Anderson and Robbie Peralta. He has some pretty reckless stand-up. It's funny, he has like a boxing background and a boxing record, but if you watch like the Jake Matthews fight, I mean the guy's just throwing uppercuts from his knees. His grappling didn't look that great. He's an athletic guy, but otherwise not the greatest. The other thing with the Explode Fight series, it's notorious for putting up for like can crushing. So you'll get a guy like Dashon Johnson, who's pretty good, up against some real cans. So when he went up, so now he's in the UFC fighting like a Jake Matthews. He's pretty good, but still needs work. Jake Matthews just like wrecks the guy, pretty much. I think Dashon Johnson managed to get him once coming in, but otherwise he got ground and pounded to death and eventually got triangled. Gotta go without Godofredo Pepey. I feel that he's barely UFC caliber, like he's a lower level fighter. But now he does have a good ground game. He is reckless in the stand-up, which probably works to his detriment. They're both pretty reckless in the stand-up. But I think overall Pepey's probably just a better fighter here. I can see Dashon Johnson winging some punches, maybe catching Pepey on the chin. Otherwise, on the ground especially, Pepey would win. I gotta go Godofredo Pepey to win that one. Next fight is that Igor Araujo fights George Sullivan. Sullivan has a 15-3 record with 1 no contest, 10 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by decision. He also has 2 losses by sub. He's on a 7-fight win streak and trains out of Pellegrino MMA. It's like Kurt Batman Pellegrino, obviously. He's most recently coming off a win over Mike Rhodes, who was actually a pretty hype prospect. Right? Yeah, I believe, he's coming off the win over Mike Rhodes. Showed some good stand-up against him. He was also, he threw a lot more volume than Rhodes. That's the thing I noticed, that he was throwing a good amount of volume in his striking. But Igor Araujo, 25-6 record with 1 no contest, 1 win by KO, 17 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO. 33 years old, 6-fight win streak. Trains out of Jackson Winklejohn. He has some good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. He's good in the clinch. His stand-up's pretty average. He actually has some wins over like Eldemar Alcantara. Who else has he beaten? He beat the Cheesecake Assassin in his last fight, but he's Danny Mitchell. He's not that great, to be honest with you. I think that Igor can use his clinch game and maybe even get the fight to the ground and use his superior grappling to get the win here. So I'm gonna go with Igor Araujo to win that one. Okay, next fight of that, Leandro Buscape Silva fights Francisco Massaranduba Trinado. Well, Silva, I believe he got brought back into the UFC. He had 1 fight in the UFC, got cut, now he's coming back. So Silva, 16-1 record with 1 draw, 1 win by TKO, 9 wins by sub, 28 years old on a fight win streak. His game, his strength really is in his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Massaranduba, 14-4 record, 5 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by submission. 36 years old. He's trading wins and losses right now. Most recently losing to Michael Chiesa. He is big for 155. When he came into UFC and then he fought in the Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 1, he fought at 185. The guy's huge for the weight class. His stand-up is good. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is solid. His cardio isn't that good. I gotta go with Trinado to win this one. It's actually hard for me to call because I have seen Trinado lose to superior Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu players. Gleison Tibau. Piotr Hallmann actually managed to take him down, especially when he got tired, and get a Kimura off of him. And Michael Chiesa managed to take him down and get mount on him and whatnot, and hold those dominant positions on him. But one tie-in thing with those 3 guys is that those guys do have some pretty decent wrestling. I don't know if Silva has the wrestling or takedown game to do that to Trinado, especially since he's so big too. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Trinado. I think he can do pretty well to stand up, hold himself, do well enough on the ground as well. I'll go Trinado to win that one. Next fight after that, Sean Spencer fights Paulo Thiago. Paulo Thiago has a 15-7 record, 2 wins by KO or TKO, 8 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO. 33 years old on a 2-fight losing streak. He's only won 2 of his last 8 fights. Training out of X Gym. He's a part-time fighter because he works for Pepey and then he does like MMA on the side, and I think it's starting to really show these days. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt with a legit Darce choke and front choke game. Stand-up's average. He does hit hard. I've seen him drop guys like Swick and Kozchek and whatnot. He actually has some solid judo takedowns that I've seen him use. I think the guy's on a total decline. I love the guy. I think the guy is totally declining now. I think he's a lot slower these days. His cardio isn't the greatest. Who did he lose to last? Was it Albert Einstein Tumanov, I think? you know, he just doesn't look that great, and his record shows. Sean Spencer, 11-3 record, 2 wins by KO TKO, 2 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by submission. Training out of Octagon MMA with the likes of Matt Hobar and Damon Jackson, both on the UFC. He has some solid boxing, some pretty good takedown defense, actually. He actually had a really good fight against Alex Garcia, who is a pretty hype prospect as well. Sean Spencer's actually not a bad prospect, but, you know, he's a good, like, solid mid-level guy. And I think that's enough to beat Paulo Thiago. I think he can outbox him. The problem with Sean Spencer, he has, like, no knockout. He's not heavy-handed at all. He's a volume puncher. Doesn't really have heavy hands. Not a guy that's known for, like, wobbling guys or knocking them down. And I think he can defend a takedown from Paulo Thiago as well. Probably has a better cardio too. So yeah, I'm a fan of Paulo Thiago, but you know, I just think the guy's just on a really bad decline. Gotta go Sean Spencer to win that one. And finally, got a rematch here as Johnny Bedford fights Rani Yahya. Yahya has a 19-8 record with 1 no contest, 15 wins by submission, 4 wins by decision. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO. He's 29 years old. He's a legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Very good when he takes the back. Has good offensive takedowns. He can kind of be a grinder sometimes, though. Sometimes he'll take a guy down, get dominant position, take the back, and just kind of like do that for 2 rounds, and then like his cardio gets sapped into third. You know, he's really relentless. He's about getting his takedowns, but I think it really costs him in the cardio department. Bedford, 19-11 record with 1 draw and 1 no contest, 7 wins by KO or TKO, 8 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by KO or TKO and 9 losses by submission. He's 31 years old. The last time he's actually won a fight was back in December 2012. But he's a solid fighter. He's big for 135. He's pretty aggressive and pushes forward, especially with his stand-up. He's a guy that likes to outsize his opponent and overwhelm them. So he'll push forward, stay in the pocket, use like good knees and punches and whatnot, and just overwhelm his opponent in the stand-up. His grappling, it's actually not the worst, but his sub, I mean, 9 of his like 11 losses are by sub. So his sub defense, it's actually improving. He doesn't get like too insta-tapped or anything like that, but like it's still one of his like weaknesses. And obviously Rani Yahya, being the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt that he is, could capitalize on that. However, if he wants the first fight, I think I picked Yahya last time to win. I'm going to go with Bedford this time. I think he's just going to overwhelm Yahya in the stand-up. If he gets taken down, though, it could spell trouble. But I can see the fight kind of stay standing. Bedford just using his size and just trying to overwhelm Rani Yahya in the stand-up and get the win there. So to recap the main card, I have Antonio Bigfoot Silva beating Andrei Arlovski, Gleison Tibau over Piotr Hallmann, Leonardo Santos over Efrain Escudero, Wendell Oliveira Marquez over Santiago Ponzinibbio, Yuri Alcantara beating Russell Doane, and Jessica Andrade over Larissa Moreira Pacheco. Okay, on the prelims, I've Godofredo Pepey over Dashon Johnson, Igor Araujo over George Sullivan, Francisco Trinaldo beating Leandro Silva, Sean Spencer over Paulo Thiago, Johnny Bedford beating Rani Yahya. So that's it for my predictions for UFC Fight Night 51, Bigfoot versus Arlovski 2. If you have any comments, just leave them below. That's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.